live. Click that button. Concurrent views. There's 8 already, so
Damn.
that's more.
Welcome.
Well, hold on.
We're
Wait,
not live yet?
it says you're live now. There's a big explanation.
Oh, this is gonna be a fun
Exclamation
episode.
mark. There we go. Okay.
Maybe, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna just test to make sure the sound's working. Here, go live. Click that button. Concurrent views. There's 8 already, so
Damn.
that's more.
Welcome.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. John says, "Hey." Actually says, "Sup, my
Sup?
dudes."
What's going on?
You wish you had like access to this, don't you?
I do.
Do you want to grab my iPad?
Not today. Maybe we'll do it later.
You could probably use your phone actually to do it.
Again, we'll do it next time.
Yeah.
I do wish I had my own laptop here. I'm in the dark right now.
Well, I mean,
I'm reacting to everything.
No, I just tell you what's happening. I could
Yeah.
say anything. I could say
Yeah,
John
you
Rock.
could be lying.
There could you know what? It's so weird. John Rock just said you're an idiot. It's so rude, John.
Oh shit.
Marco said, "Let's get this party started."
Yeah.
So as usual, we're gonna give everyone about a 5-minute.
Buffer.
I was gonna say head start, but that doesn't make any sense,
That's
right?
quite the opposite.
Yeah. Kevin Long, hey.
What's up? Brand new.
Yeah. You know what? Hello to everyone who's new.
Hello to everyone in general.
Everyone is new. Yeah, well, especially those who are new. It's nice to see new faces in the live chat. But and you know what's even nicer than that? This wine that we're drinking. There's so much of it.
There's a lot of wine.
So we started drinking wine at the beginning. We were like, I don't want to look away from the screen for 1 second, so I'm going to pour myself a really tall, like extra tall glass. Drink the whole thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, just in case, but I take the whole thing and then went back for more halfway through.
So we still ended up looking away a little bit.
Yeah. That's funny. Oh yeah, and John says Howlin' Reed never showed.
He's still coming, John.
He's still coming.
I promise you.
He's still coming.
He's the only one who knows.
Okay, hold on. We got another listener here. San Bruno Loser. It's all one word, so it's unclear.
You might be mispronouncing that.
San Bruno Ozer?
It's Loser.
And Marcos asked if it's Game of Thrones wine. No, it's called Copper Moon, and it's the lowest common denominator of boxed wine. Actually, it's pretty good boxed wine, but low on the regular wine.
As far as
scale.
boxed wine goes, this is my boxed wine of preference.
Yeah, I agree. It's a good one. It's a gooder. Okay. Let's see. We're at 10:05.
Yeah, that means we're good to go.
All right. So, how do I do this? What do we do? I should click the record button. So I should do the first thing. That would be embarrassing if we had not done that. Can you check your mic for me?
Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Game
and
of Thrones.
see, that's why. Can you check your mic again?
Okay, I'm still doing what I was doing before, and
Yeah, no,
it's
it's working now. Yeah, it wasn't working for a second. All right. Oh, John says the title says is The Long Night. Okay.
We had assumed the battle for Winterfell,
But it's like too close to just the title Winterfell, which was 2 episodes ago.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
The Long Night.
Yeah. Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Game of Thrones Tower Babble live reaction episode. Thank you for joining us. You are all supporters of the show, all Patreon subscribers, and we can't thank you all enough. So hello to the new faces. Welcome back to those who have been here the last 2 episodes or even just last episode. It's really nice to see this kind of growing. It's a melancholy thing because it's episode 3, which means there's only 3 episodes left. Every episode's getting bigger, so it's exciting but also sad because we're getting closer to the end.
Right.
But we're here to break down this most recent episode. A solid 80 minutes of just nonstop, heart-pounding, anxiety-inducing, wine-drinking, action-packed episode of Game of Thrones. So we're being told that the title is The Long Night, which makes sense. And I mean, my heart was pounding like throughout, right? It was at like 50. Okay, so when I'm sleeping, So I have this new ring tracker
Okay,
that
we
sleeps
don't
my.
need to- we don't
No,
need
no,
to
it's
detail
important.
about
I think
your
it's
ring.
important. So it's so when I'm sleeping, my ring gives me like an average BPM of like 52 beats per minute, and one time it clocked me in while I was working when I was like really at like high pressure at like 83 beats per minute.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can only assume that this was topping up, is like hitting the hundreds, hitting the 3 digits for sure
Right.
at the BPMs. Unhealthy for the heart, probably. But
What are you gonna do?
okay, so how do we describe this episode? Dan, why don't you go first and just overall quick reaction, immediate reaction thoughts on this episode?
I mean, it's much like when we saw Endgame the other day. Like, I'm still processing things. There's a hell of a lot going on. For
What a time to be alive, Dan.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
So not a lot of dialogue, a lot of action, obviously. My first sort of nitpicky thing is that it's so dark and there's so many muted colors. It's really hard to see exactly what's going on at all times. So it's hard to tell if that person that just died is someone you should know or don't know.
Yeah. Which dragon are we looking at?
Exactly. So, like, not only is it dark, obviously it's nighttime, then there's the blizzard, which makes sense. I understand.
It makes sense, but it makes it so much harder. It was already hard, and then they made it that much harder to see what was happening.
So it's a little hard to discern the minor details, but that's the the benefit of a rewatch, and that's why we go on YouTube and pause and play and really break it down, right?
Yeah, like so.
But initially, yeah, insane episode, so much going on, completely unpredictable. Even though there were certain pieces.
I want everyone to know that Daniel's arms are on top of his head right now. I don't think he even realized what he was doing. His arms are literally crossed on top of his head.
I do this every podcast, man. The thing with the undead Starks was a major prediction for a lot of people. Obviously, it came to fruition. There were some nondescript zombies popping out of some graves. I think it loses a bit of its meaning if it's just nondescript zombies. Like, if they're just in an area with undead, it might as well have been White Walkers and Whites coming into the crypts from some secret tunnel, right? It actually makes no difference to the characters that are there. So, whatever, it happened. Aside from that, no, like you said, edge of your seat. I'm having a hard time still reacting to it.
Right. I mean, like, it's hard to process because it's hard to know what we saw. So I agree with you in a lot of sense because I think Miguel Sapochnik, who directed this episode, who directed episodes like The Battle of the Bastards and Hard Home, is known for having a pretty clear and understandable action and geography.
Right.
So a part of a good action scene is not just the immediate choreography you're seeing, but also understanding where in context these characters are and in what's happening around them.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of lost to a degree for a while. Again, not that I didn't enjoy the episode. I enjoyed the episode, but there are plenty of sequences where a character shows up and it seems sort of convenient. How did Jorah get back to Dany in the middle of that field? That kind of stuff. Like, it's not really who knows where he was or wasn't, and you fill in the blanks in your own imagination, and that's great. But the idea is this army of the undead is unstoppable. There's a million of them swarming the walls, and you jump from that to a quiet sequence inside Winterfell where Arya's going through tunnels.
Yeah, so I think that's the low mark of this episode. So I think overall, it totally hits the mark in terms of large scale epic action,
right?
And like giving homage to all these different types of war type sequences and all that. That's really good and really cool. Wish I could have seen a little bit more of it, like visually, actually been able to see what was happening. But
I mean, maybe that's on us. Maybe we got.
I mean, it's okay. So so we're not watching it on the best TV, and C, we skip B. B doesn't matter. C, we're watching it on Crave, so and that only gives us 720p, so that's not great.
Yeah.
But I was talking with Dan before we started recording about how getting our tax return, I'm looking to buy a new TV. And how OLED gives these like deep blacks, right? These like crystal perfect blacks. And I feel bad for people who have OLED TVs. I want an OLED TV because I want that high contrast. But if you have the black levels that were on this episode and you had a TV like that, you probably couldn't see anything. And I feel like it's tough. And I feel for the show because they're kind of between a rock and a hard place. Like, they want to be able to get as much bang for the buck, and you turn the lights down and you can get a lot more claustrophobic and a lot more epic out of it. Think of early seasons, season 2, Battle of Blackwater, much lower stakes, much lower scale, but it feels big because it's dark and you can't see what's happening. So they do that. So they do that. That makes it feel bigger, but they still have a large budget. So there's a lot happening, but ultimately it just makes it confusing. And I think that the takeaway from this episode is, yeah, there's some really amazing moments, and your heart was racing the whole time because you cared about these characters. But I spent too much time asking you, what was that? Who was that? What was that?
Right.
What dragon is that? Than I was invested in the actual moments. And I think that's the hardest part about the show, is that we always love the action, but it's really, at the end of the day, what we want is those intimate character moments, which we got last episode.
Right, and that's what last episode focused on, so they made room for this episode. I think when we say that we were on the edge of our seat, we were high anxiety, high blood pressure, whatever you want to call it. For me personally, using my I statements, it was more about what was going to come next than about what was happening now.
Mm-hmm.
So it was more about anticipation. It was like, okay, I understand this is happening, and I don't know how to process it necessarily. How are they going to get to X moment that I have imagined in my head? And most of them they didn't get to, but a lot of them they did. So it's not quite the same thing as experiencing real time.
Right. So here, let's jump to the chat room for a quick sec, see what's happening in there. Okay, so Marco said he had to turn his TV up to the brightest and still saw nothing.
Yep.
And the subtitles were almost misleading. So I don't watch with subtitles on the first watch. I always watch with subtitles on the second watch.
Yep.
Because I don't want to I don't want it to flavor what I'm seeing, Because I find sometimes the subtitles are kind of weird, like sharp inhales and weird stuff that you're like, I wouldn't have read it that way, but interesting. So that's fair, and I think again it's just too dark. They really cranked up the low visibility. This is Jason Telford with the low visibility with the snowstorm too. Yeah, I think the show could have done without that. I really think it could have done without it. And I think it would almost have been better without it.
No, but the thing with that is, like you said earlier, they're between a rock and a hard place because they have to mute the fire, right? Lighting the ring wall.
See,
fire.
But it was. I think you made that statement, and it never rung true to me that snowstorm it was preventing them from using their arrows to light the fire.
No. It was preventing the arrows, but it was also preventing the dragons from being effective.
Right.
They were thrown apart.
But also
John
prevented his dragon from being effective.
His dragon was fine, but John and Danny were separated and didn't know how to be effective and part of the battle, right? So it's tough. The thing is, as a filmmaker, you're stuck because it has to be at night, and you have to deal with the fact that these are armies. It's light versus dark, and one of the things that stuck out to me at the beginning of the episode, Melisandre arrives. Forget about the contrivance of that.
Right.
But she arrives and she
comes from the direction the dead was fine. Don't worry about it.
Don't ask questions. She arrives. She lights the Dothraki on fire, and they go charging off into the night.
Yeah.
Great. A beautiful moment.
Yeah.
And then go to John.
The actual visual style of that is amazing.
Awesome.
Right.
And my favorite part of that is they go charging off, and then one by one all the lights go out.
Yeah.
And that really rings true because it is the long night. It's the battle of night versus day. It's actual darkness that they're fighting.
Right.
So there's no army on the other side. It's them fighting the void, and their lights are being snuffed out one by one. It's a really cool sequence, and it really speaks volumes to the show.
One of the best moments of the entire episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else we got here? Jason Telford again. I think the show made a mistake not having the White Walkers participate in the battle, and I think I agree
100%.
with that because I think there's the sense that I got from this battle was just overwhelming loss and just constantly losing, right? Imagine this episode a little bit different, and I hate to do this. I don't like going saying, what if I was making the episode? I don't like doing that. But let's just imagine a case where you had some of the White Walkers more involved, and that they were big, hard to take down like sub bosses, right?
Yep.
But let's say they get like a lucky strike, and there's like a couple of our favorite characters team up to take down one, and that like causes like a swath of the dead to kind of fall. That like then there's like a kind of a give and take of this battle, and instead of just constantly falling back and losing,
a little bit of ebb and flow. I was imagining that before we watched the episode. I think in broad strokes that's a bit more traditional storytelling. which is they've gone out of their way to be non-traditional.
Yeah.
With how they handle Game of Thrones. So
What's non-traditional is
and-
not putting your mini bosses in the,
well, sure,
in the battle.
and maybe to a fault, right? Because those other whatever 12 or 13 White Walkers literally did nothing. They just walked around
Yeah.
and then blew up when the Night King died.
Yeah. Yeah. And well, they looked like a cool entourage,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, presumably they were doing some sort of like commanding.
I don't even
you
know. It didn't really seem like it. It seemed like they just hung back and then they had their own posse and then they were going after Bran, which makes sense. That's what they established last episode.
Okay, so Marcus says at one point when Viserion was breathing fire at Jon, trying to get to Bran, it actually said Drogon roars on subtitles. So that would be misleading. That would literally, yes, that's in the most strictest sense, yes.
It's misleading if you're the imagery versus the subtitles. I guess theoretically, Drogon was roaring somewhere in the background.
Right. So we'd asked, or I had asked you which dragon that was preventing Jon from getting to Bran. Okay, but what happened to Jon's dragon?
That is unclear. So Rhaegal goes down. Jon jumps off his back.
Yeah.
Unclear what happens to that dragon. Doesn't show up for the rest of the episode. Drogon comes back. Rhaegal doesn't.
Right, and he comes off of that before the whole raise the army again happens again. So presumably, if he'd done that, he would have come back too.
Had Rhaegal been dead, he could have theoretically brought him back. But the thing is, if they're going to do that, they would do it on screen. They wouldn't ask the audience to fill in those blanks. And that didn't happen. I don't believe that dragon was anybody but Viserion.
Right. And Jason also points out that the blue fire coming out of its neck was
right?
Very cool visual. I think if we're, let's talk about the things we really did like about the episode. I think the way it started, there's a really amazing one shot that followed a few different characters as people were getting ready and prepared. I mentioned in our breakdown last week that they had built a giant new set for Winterfell specifically for the ability to do these long one shots because they couldn't have done before because the set was just not big enough.
Right.
And if you turned around, there would be no set. So they've done that. They've done these. They do two of them. So that one at the beginning and a second one later on with Jon as he's coming. He goes for Bran, right? And he's going through Winterfell and he's seeing his friends,
which is a
die.
Crazy scene. I remember that was nuts. He looked and he saw Sam being overwhelmed by undead and he kept walking. He saw, Jaime Brienne, they're not exactly friends, but still allies, saw them being overwhelmed and kept walking. And it does make sense. His ultimate goal is to prevent the long night. So, the ends justify the means. These people are fulfilling their roles. They're sacrificing their lives for the good. Great. But it's just crazy to see Jon look at Sam and then not save his best friend.
Well, I think it's a moment like we talked about what was happening. It's like they talked about this before in the previous episode. The one chance they had was to take out the Night King.
Yeah.
Right? They had no other option. So he says, yeah, this is the worst it could possibly be, but if I can get to the Night King now, because he saw him take off, leave for Bran, if I can get to him and kill him now, I can save all of them.
No, it's great, and it's arguably the right decision. It's just difficult to put yourself in that situation and imagine if you could make the same decision knowing someone that you love is being murdered in front of your eyes. Right?
Yeah. So Wayne Iabust in the chat room says, I was waiting for a one-shot comparable to the Battle of the Bastards when you have the horses come. So the problem with this episode is it's too dark to do it and give it justice because there actually is moments similar to that in this episode when you have this wall of darkness kind of overtake our heroes. But you have such a hard time seeing what's actually happening that it loses its impact. And I at the end of the day, I think the biggest takeaway from this episode is missed opportunity because it's so unclear what's actually happening. Is really unfortunate.
To a degree. I think that the episode opens with and it's relying on that darkness, and I think that really serves the episode, especially at the beginning, when they don't know what they're facing, and it is just a wall of black coming at them. That the audience and the army are in the same position. You have no idea what's going on. Then towards the latter half of the episode, once we really get into the battle in earnest, that darkness and that lack of clarity doesn't really serve the episode as much anymore.
Do you think Ghost bit it?
That's hard to say. He
died off screen. If he died off screen, that sucks because he's the last direwolf, and it's like,
well, Nymeria is still alive.
Yeah, okay, but we're not seeing Nymeria again. So he's the last direwolf with a connection to our characters that we actually see on screen, but we don't see him die on screen.
Here's what's probably going to happen. Okay, so maybe Ghost died. likely Ghost died. Didn't appear in the rest of the episode. So they'll do something. The impact of that will be felt next episode. John, like when they're gonna have to examine the battlefield.
Right.
He's gonna find his dead direwolf, or maybe he felt it at some point, right? Because they have an intrinsic connection. It's hard to say, but it did feel a little not a waste, but like it didn't really serve. It didn't give Ghost his.
It
his
sucks
justice.
because people have been people like Ghost. Ghost is a very likable character. You know, he's this like from a. You know, people like the direwolves.
As far as
He's
direwolves go,
right,
yeah.
right. There's not a lot of them, and Ghost, more than any of the others, had a personality that allowed you to connect to him, right? So, seeing him ride off with the Dothraki is very cool. Not seeing him come back sucks. Him dying off screen is the worst possible outcome. So,
Well, you know what? I don't know.
I think there's still a chance that he can be alive. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. He could come limping back.
Yeah.
It's hard to say because you know what truly did suck is when Summer died. The door episode, right? Where Hoarder's holding the door. Summer growls, jumps into an army of the undead, and then you hear a whimper, and he's dead. And that's it. And I think the direwolves aren't considered actual characters. They're not given their due.
Right.
What happens to all of the
They're
main
more
characters-
They've always been treated as more symbolic than anything else.
Right, and
Right.
in my mind, once one of them loses their direwolf, they lose their sort of their inner, like their conscious, their instinct sort of thing, right? So Sansa, it happened to Sansa too early, and that's why she went down a path that she did, right? Or one of the reasons. That's not the only reason. I'm building it up a bit too much right now, but that's what these animal companions always serve as the main characters' natural instincts and intuition.
I think you might be reading him into it a bit much.
I think I'm right.
Okay. Well, of course you do. So we're getting some pushback here on Sam's ability to defend himself.
Yep.
And I think that's fair because he literally, think to this season alone, this amazing scene where Sam comes to tell Jon about his parentage. He literally off screen falls over, stumbles around, whoa, like Goof Troop style, and he gives the sword to Jorah because he says he can't hold it up straight.
And then in this episode, he's one of three characters that's standing on a mountain or a hill made of dead bodies while he's fighting off whites.
Right. And I think we can all say that he's probably alive next episode,
Yep.
and it's kind of bullshit, right? A little bit.
Yeah. I the only thing, if I'm grasping at straws and trying to defend the show, is that they're an army of undead. They're not thinking. They're just attacking.
So he
it's
has an
easier-
upper hand on that because he has a brain.
Yeah, so it's a bit easier to defend against that. You just have to have an arm and a knife in the right place, I
Right.
guess. Even then, coordination is not his strong suit, so who knows?
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for him to be one of the survivors, having been part of the main thrust
It's like
of the
I
battle.
think I just at the end of the day, like, why was he just be in the crypts? I think it would have been cool for him to try to defend Gilly in the crypts from these creatures coming up from the tombs.
The problem with that is we've already seen that story. The first time he killed a White Walker and he was defending Gilly and her baby. That's what gave him the courage to do it.
Yeah.
So you can't repeat history. You can't do that again. He needed to do something different. In fact, in this episode, he didn't do much, but it was at least different.
What did he do? He got Ed dead. He
the-
killed Dead. He killed Ed dead.
The point is that he wanted to be one of the men facing the battle, whereas earlier in his character's story, he would have been the one hiding, right?
Yeah.
So he's developed a bit of confidence, even though he's not physically capable. He knows that the
Well,
best
that's
you
the
can-
problem. He's not physically capable and somehow
No, but the point
died.
is
Stayed alive.
the point is that he stands beside his brothers either way.
We have San Bruno Ozer. I'm going to call him that instead of San Bruno Loser.
Okay.
Said he wasn't standing. He was lying on his back begging for Jon to save him.
That's true. Though. Towards the end, yes, yeah, he was overwhelmed and he looked like he was being killed. Obviously, I don't think they're going to kill Sam off screen.
Can we say this for a moment? And I guess partial. How do we say this? How do we say this without spoiling stuff? But we were making allusions to while this was happening, and it looks like everything was everyone was going to die. It looked like everything was gone.
Yeah,
and lost,
I know where you're going
right?
with this, and we probably shouldn't.
We can't. It's too
We can't.
soon. It's Sunday of it. Okay, yeah. So
just
know that
know that we
next
were thinking
week.
of something.
Next week we'll talk about. We'll talk about it next week.
You can't do
We'll
that.
talk about it next week.
That was
but-
useless.
It's hard to say. It's hard to talk around. It's an Avengers thing, but it's fine. Okay. Okay. So we'll call him Bruno. He just calls
That
him
works.
Bruno.
That works.
That's fine. I'll call you Bruno. All right, fair. Or B, he says, but I prefer Bruno. All right. What else do we have to break down? I think we mentioned this earlier, but this like lull in the action here with Arya and this like quiet moment in the library, I guess, doesn't play for me. It doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't because I don't understand why we're spending all this time with Arya, who we just saw murder like 8 of them, 9 of them, like in like split seconds, having to like sneak around when there's like 4 undead, like searching around through the library. So it feels contrived to me.
You know, and you're probably right. I like the scene itself. It's a cool horror scene. She's sneaking around. The reason it doesn't make sense is it jumps from undead storming the walls,
Right.
overwhelming the defenses.
Right. World War Z style.
Yeah. To Arya in a quiet room with a bunch of them that are just there, and it's like, how did they get there? Why are they all of a sudden now not rampant, not rampaging through the halls?
Right.
By the way, that scene ends with them rampaging. Like a door breaks down and they all start running.
Yeah. Then and there's like a tidal wave. It might as well have been a tidal wave of water, but it was just dead bodies.
It's a cool sequence, and I like the idea of, like they said before the season started, sequences within sequences. So there's a larger battle outside and a more intimate sort of low level battle inside. I like the concept of that. But it has to make sense within the episode, and for it to jump from one to the other, it just seems jarring because you're going from this high action to some random thing, but how Arya got from point A to point B is not clear.
It's not. Okay, go through your list. See if we touched on the right most.
I made some notes real quick right before we started recording. Melisandre arrives and lights the Dothraki on fire. Got it.
Okay, we touched on that, but like, can I just say again, the visual of not just them riding off and then the lights being snuffed out, but the visual of her asking Jorah, do you speak the language? Tell them to lift their swords, and then going up and then lighting the first one, and then from the perspective of the walls of Winterfell, seeing them all ignite, and it's this very empowering moment. It's very exciting because this is before things start to turn very shitty.
Yeah. And that's an important note too, because it really is darkness all around them, and that you can see they have reaction shots for a lot of the main characters along the wall. They don't smile necessarily, but they're like, it's like a breath of relief.
Give some hope.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lost hope, I think, by a lot of the characters in this. I think to specifically character like the Hound, who, again, the fire was too much for him to handle, and is basically hiding and saying, "There's nothing we can do. The dead are going to win. It's nothing."
Okay.
And then Arya is the
Catalyst.
the catalyst to help him overcome that.
But barely, like
Just enough
that he starts moving again. So what's his arc then? This is at least the second or third time that he's been turned off by fire to the point that he just doesn't. No, it's the third or fourth time. The first time is the Blackwater.
Yeah.
To my memory, it happens again north of the wall with the fire bear, and then it happens now. Fire, he just shuts down.
Yeah.
And he can't help anybody. How is he going to overcome that? Because he saw Arya and he overcame it for a little bit, but in terms of his arc going forward, it's not going to be the undead attacking anymore. It's gonna be him and his
he might
brother.
he might not have to deal with it anymore.
But that's not a satisfying.
But what if yeah, I guess I think you might be reading it wrong. I think what we're seeing is this moment is him overcoming it. And if you were looking for more, I don't think you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they probably should have made it 82 minutes.
that moment of him of Beric saying, pull your shit together. She did.
Yeah.
And him saying, "Oh fuck, you're right," and then going and doing it is more than he has done in the past when it's come to this. Every other time, he's basically given up.
Yeah.
So that is the turn, and you're not going to see it a more. He's not going to say you're not going to see him next week come and say, "You know what, guys, thank you so much. My fear of fire totally gone."
Yeah, I don't think anybody expects that, but something a bit more satisfying. But again,
I thought that was satisfying.
There's
I don't
so
know.
many characters; it's hard to give them all their due within one episode. In terms of other notes that I have, the Unsullied, actually, I wanted to touch on this. It's unclear whether or not Grey Worm died.
I think no. The answer is I believe the answer is no so far.
But what was cool was he protected the retreat. He's like
Mm.
amazing
So cool.
sequence.
So that whole sequence of the hold the line, they can't hold the line, fall back, and then the Dothraki stepping up and saying, "We're gonna hold the line while they."
Unsullied.
Sorry, did I say the Dothraki? That's okay. So the Unsullied saying, "We're gonna hold the line," as these people open. And by the way, every time someone yells something, and then someone else yells it right after, like "Open the gate," and then someone says "Open the gates." Always get excited for that.
Amazing.
It's so great. But so that happens at that point, and Lyanna is the one who says "Open the gates." So they open the gates. People are streaming in, which is really cool. And you get this like crane shot essentially over the wall. We don't get enough of this, and why I like this moment so much in this episode is because you get to see the how the formations look and what's actually happening for a brief second. So you actually see the people streaming back and the Dothraki filling in the gaps behind them, right? And
Unsullied again.
Okay, yeah, you know what I mean. And okay, so the Dothraki, the Unsullied.
That was a joke. You had to be joking that time.
Yeah, you got me. So the Unsullied filling in the gaps behind them, and you actually get to see it a couple times as they keep moving back. And then I think there's a moment where Grey Worm sacrifices a large section of his,
and that's important. So he has Unsullied are their foot soldiers, so he has a contingent that is protecting everybody, and he waits as long as he possibly could, and then he pulls it. They're dead. Save everybody who can be saved.
It's really cool because it's like one of those. You can hear him breathing through his mask and his helmet. Essentially, it's really loud. There's they do a lot, which again always is very effective. But I don't know how to describe it. It's almost too effective because they do the heartbeat breath thing.
Yeah,
it forces your body to match those sounds, and it like engages your anxiety like hardcore.
I think that's the purpose.
And I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's like it's manipulative almost. It's fine because it works in this setting, and they do it a lot in this episode.
And I think that's why, like to be completely frank, I think that's why a lot of us do this kind of stuff. This is the same reason people go on roller coasters. You want to be afraid.
Yeah, I get it. I don't watch horror movies, Daniel. I told you this.
I know, but it's the point of it is catharsis, is to feel something. It's not that you don't feel things in your regular life. It's this is an opportunity.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Something that you weren't expecting.
Movies and television are empathy machines. I said this all the time. They're just a vehicle for you to experience new emotions.
He says it all the time.
I do actually.
Yeah.
And they're a vehicle to experience new emotions, and one of the emotions you get to feel is anxiety and fear, and that's something that they definitely excel at in this episode, is delivering. But I think I lost what I was talking about. So, all right, let's check in. Let's check in on what's happening on the chat room. Blah blah blah. So there was a quick mention earlier of Lyanna going out like a badass.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair. I don't know who said it. I forget. I apologize because I can't find it here in the list. But Lyanna does go out like a badass. So I think, Dan, you were worried that she died when she just got like swatted by the giant the first time.
Yeah.
And then she has like this like charge. I don't know what her plan was originally. Maybe she hoped to get picked up. Who knows?
She didn't hope for anything. She was just fighting.
Right.
That's all you can do at that point is fight back.
Yep.
You can choose to lay down and die or get up and fight.
Yep.
And she chose the latter.
So she gets picked up by the giant and is being crushed to death.
Yeah, we hear her being crushed.
And she stabs him in the eyeball. And I think one of the other things that I'll give props to the show for doing, and I don't know if it's the first time that it's been this prevalent, but when a White Walker or a White Walker dies, you hear this like shattery sound that tells you that creature is dead because it's unclear otherwise.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think the idea is like ice cracking.
Yeah, but either way, it's an effective use of sound to help clear things up, even though when things are very.
The only thing I would add to that, I think it was a great sequence. I think it makes sense for her character. Amazing, she's a badass. She does come back later on when they do the sequence with the eyes going blue, and then we don't see her. Who knows what happened to her after that? It's not that important.
It's not. I think what they wanted to do is at least show some of our characters that we liked coming back.
You know what? I honestly thought there would be more of that. I thought that we would, like, as devastating as this episode was, I thought we were going to have more deaths, and I thought we were going to see characters that are really important coming back and having our main characters have to deal with, looking at them in their now blue eyes. We didn't get a lot of that. It was more just bad guys versus good guys.
Okay, another thing, Marcus Perez. One thing though, they had the trench set on fire as a last stand. It took 8 whites to lay down and leave a path for the army.
In one spot. I think the idea is that they did that in multiple spots.
Yeah, I mean, they do. And then I think eventually they just kind of like overwhelm the entire trench.
It's World War Z, man. They just, yeah.
And I think it's a really apt comparison. We've used it once already. But if anyone who's seen the film World War Z, it's not a great movie. I'll put it that way. It's fine. But what it does with the idea of hordes of enemies is, I think, rarely done.
And what I would say,
yeah,
having read both the source material, both the books,
here we
neither Game of Thrones, any of the books, nor World War Z do they have these crazy, fast-moving hordes of zombies. It's all about the fact that their numbers are overwhelming. They're slow-moving. In Game of Thrones, they actually still maintain some of their memory, but it's not about them being just a ravenous horde of monsters. It's more about just the sheer volume of them that you can't deal with. And it's different than the route they chose to take with both the movie and the show.
Right.
This is more Hollywood. It's more entertaining. It's more exciting. I get that. It's not what the source material was, and I think it's a different style of zombie movie that you don't see very often, and it could be interesting the other way. But what do I know?
Right. Okay. Here's a cool idea. We were wondering about kind of. So Jason. For a second, I was waiting for Bran to warg Theon and fight the Night King.
I also had the same thought. I don't know how that would have played out. But I like just the way that he turned to Theon and said, "Theon, you're a good man." I could imagine him eyes going white. Now he's Theon.
Right, and then like using his it's like I'm gonna use your body for a second. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
But like
You've done.
It doesn't really make any sense because Theon always was a better fighter than Bran ever was. Right, like so what would Bran be able to bring to using Theon's body that would help? It doesn't really work. But actually, let's talk about this for a moment. Is Theon's death satisfying to you?
Yeah, no, for me, yes.
Okay.
I think I think a lot of us predicted this. His arc came full circle. He achieved his
There was
redemption.
nowhere else for Theon to go, so he had to die. It's really kind of unfortunate.
No, because there are places he could have gone. The Iron Islands, Euron is still out there.
What I mean by, like, from a character arc standpoint, his arc was finished.
I know what you're saying.
So, yeah.
But Euron is still out there. He had failed Yara a couple times with Euron. There's still unfinished business there. But the fact that he dies defending a Stark is significant enough on its own. So I think it's very satisfying. I think Theon fully redeemed his character, which is something, early on none of us thought he could.
Yeah. Okay, what else we got in here? Someone says, "Get this man more wine." He's probably talking about how I couldn't stop saying Dothraki. So I assume that's what it was.
Yeah. Well, he's got it right in front of him.
Yeah. We should just address the elephant in the room. Did anyone, and there's a couple of people asking here, did anyone expect Arya to be the one to take out the Night King?
Again, personally, no, I didn't. I did not. I don't know about you.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Although, actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, not to say I thought about it, but I think
now that I think about it, I did think.
No, I remember talking about this with somebody. I don't remember who it was or when it was. It might have been even on our show. I can't remember, but there was definitely a question of. I think earlier, pouring more wine for himself.
That's pretty loud.
Yeah, it is. The question was, Arya's come back as this badass. Is she going to be? I'm almost positive we talked about this on the show. That the possibility of Arya somehow coming back and killing the Night King. I'm positive we talked about it. Yeah. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Sure. I mean, there's a good chance we talked about it.
I think, but we talk about everything. So, we talk about every possibility.
We talked about it, and we both said, that's probably dumb. And it's not that I don't think it was necessarily dumb. I don't think it was executed well. My cousin, by the way, she's not listening. It doesn't matter what her name is. But she did predict that Arya would be the one to kill the Night King. I think it's cool they do the whole knife trick that she showed last season with Brienne, to drop the knife to the other hand. Yeah, it's cool. But it's this focus and this emphasis on Arya being a badass that came out of nowhere, and it has nothing to do with the concept of the Long Night, the prophecy of Azor Ahai. None of that is taken into
But
consideration.
maybe those
right?
prophecies don't matter.
I know, but
But also, no, I want them to. Okay, I get that. I would say a couple issues with this Arya moment at the end. So, how does it set up? We have this moment with one of the whites, hair fluffing. I can't describe it any other way.
Yep.
And his head turning slightly. We cut to the Night King, like low angle shot, and then Arya coming out of the darkness, like to stab him. So, did she like rush past him like Flash style, like all the other whites? We know she's very good at sneaking around.
Sure,
right?
granted.
So, and then she jumps, and I think it's cool to see the Night King turn around and grab her first. I think that's a cool twist, and then switch and boom.
Yep.
It's satisfying. I'll tell you that, because it ends the whole conflict purely on that mark alone.
Yeah. That was probably going to happen either way, but
also the moment before when Melisandre has this brief conversation with her and says,
she says, "What do we say to the god of death?" And Arya says, "Not today." And now she's filled with this divine purpose, so she walks off into the background.
She knew what the plan was going forward, right? She knew what the plan was.
She knew where Bran would be.
Yeah, right.
That's
so. I'm just saying, like, it's not as crazy as it's not as unrealistic or completely out of nowhere as you make it seem. Yeah.
And it's fine. I'm not trying to be negative, but when you have an entire army of whites overtake the Ironborn, surround Theon, and then on top of that, all the White Walkers come, to have Arya come and vault over however many meters that is, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's not satisfying. It seems it's not a Deus Ex Machina, but it comes out of nowhere.
Right. The reason I asked that you mentioned that is because we were going through our list of of our death pool, and I think what we'll do is, instead of going through that today, I think what we'll do is we'll save that for our full breakdown tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I will mention that on our list of our personal one that we made ourselves, which has way too many characters, and I blame Dan for that.
It has all the necessary characters.
No, there isn't. No, that's not true. Fucking, hold on. Quaithe is on this list, and that is bullshit. That is bullshit. But one of the questions was Deus Ex Machina, ? And I had will happen. Like, that was my, there will be a Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
This is like borderline Deus Ex Machina.
It doesn't count.
It's close though, right? You had a no, I guess, on there. Is that why? Is that what you're saying?
I had a no, and I'm correct in that. No, the Deus Ex Machina would have been if Melisandre had shown up with an army of like red hands sort of thing. It would have been something completely unpredictable. Some new dragon shows up. That's a Deus Ex Machina. To have it be Arya, she was already involved in the battle. She's well aware, like you said, of the plans.
Yeah. So you're right. Yeah, and I was just making light of it. For the record, we've said this a million times, but Deus Ex Machina, the way its translation to English essentially is of the script.
Of the machine.
But in machine, in the case of these, is the script. So this doesn't come from just the script. There is some pre-established reasoning that brings Arya there.
Yeah.
And gives her the ability to do that, so it's not a Deus Ex Machina.
It's not.
It'd be like, what would be? Bran standing up out of his chair and stabbing him. That would be.
Yeah. What it is, though, is contrived, because I don't understand how Arya could have done that. And it feels like it's there to serve the story. Maybe in Martin's books, maybe that's going to happen. Maybe it's not. I'm convinced at this point the books are going to be completely different. It again, much like last episode, feels a bit too fan servicey to me.
Okay, so Marcus Perez, here we go. So, Quaithe and Howland will both ride in on Ghost.
Here we go.
Next episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple people in the chat room who contributed to that, but that's very funny. And no. So I'm holding out hope that Ghost is alive. Quaithe will never be seen again, and Howland will never be seen on the show. But
so I'll agree on Quaithe. I think Howland's still going to come by, just because we need someone who can physically prove the whole John Danny thing.
Okay. Yeah. It it would seem strange. I'm just gonna be weird because like for Danny, it's like, oh, who are you, and how am I supposed to know you were there? Like
Yeah.
it's just as convenient,
and
so
I
it
get
doesn't
that.
really matter.
I get that, and there are other people that may or may not remember him, and it's not going to be like he's going to show up and just say that. It's going to be hopefully he shows up next episode, and then it's like prolonged. You know, the
Where
more
the
I talk
fuck
about,
was he?
The more I talk about, it, the more it doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on before you dig yourself a bigger pit. Jason Telford says Arya is basically Captain Marvel, but again, we're not going to talk about that. Okay, what else is on your list there?
Okay. Melisandre lights the dish. Night King commands the army to staunch the fire. Whatever. Cool dragonflies. But by the way, as nondescript as everything was in terms of action, there were some cool shots of the dragons with the crescent moon. It was beautiful.
There's some gorgeous moments. I compared it to the shot from The Matrix. I think 3.
The worst Matrix.
Yeah, but so they had set up that the sun had been blotted out, and they get to see the sun for the first time.
Yeah,
it's a pretty cool moment.
That moment's in Matrix 2. You're talking Matrix 3 when Neo and Agent Smith go above the clouds. Two different things, but whatever.
Either way, above the clouds. That's what it reminded me of Matrix. Doesn't matter. So I was the whole time confused as to which dragon was hitting who and what was happening. So that, as cool as those individual shots are, because of how fucking confusing it was with all the snow flying, especially in the air when there's no ground reference.
Yeah,
I have no idea what the fuck's happening. Right? There was a cool moment, I'll give you this, when Jon was on the back of his dragon and they had Viserion coming around, like biting at him. Like that was kind of cool. Yeah. And you mentioned his cloak was ripped off.
Yeah.
So that
Viserion was trying to get at Jon. The Night King was controlling the zombie dragon, trying to kill Jon, the rider, not the dragon itself. Ripped his cloak off, and then the a dragon again. I don't know which one it was. Yeah. A dragon ripped out Viserion's throat, but he was still alive or
still undead. Yeah.
Yeah. Next on my list, Arya running through Winterfell. Beric Dondarrion holding the door.
Super cool, right? I think of all the cool deaths, I think that might be the best one.
It was really cool, and he was, he's always has sacrificed himself for the greater good, and he saw what was happening, sacrificed himself for Arya, and held. So both Arya and Bran had somebody hold the door for them. I thought that was cute.
Mm-hmm. John M is saying, I think that little girl with the scar died. I don't know if that's true.
Well,
we don't know. It would. But I feel like if they were gonna kill the little girl with the scar, we would have seen it more explicitly on screen.
Maybe, but I think you're right, because why introduce her as a character and give her an identity if she's gonna die off screen? So I think what's more effective in terms of the fact that they introduced her as a character is that we next episode see her alive. She made it. She did her job. She held the line. She saved everybody in the crypts as best she could. Just because we didn't see her die on screen, I think it's likely that she could have and probably should have, but she didn't.
There's also a chance we'll never see her again and not know the answer to that.
And then what's the point of that scene? But I guess it's more for Davos.
It's for Davos and for Gilly, who both were taught to read by the same person, which we didn't reference last time, by the way. We should have mentioned that.
Huh.
Yeah.
What do you know?
Yeah. Okay, what else on your list? We're pushing 47 minutes.
I mean, I think we've been jumping around a lot, so a lot of these things we've already got to. So Theon holds the line. Bran says he was a good man.
Yeah, I think the whole moment in the Godswood with all of the Ironborn, and they're this. We didn't get to see a lot of it, but these sprinting individual zombies coming and sprinting at them, and then them being able to basically hold them off with their bows is very cool. It's a very Hawkeye-esque moment, if we can keep using Avengers references. So I did like that. I liked Theon's death. I didn't like how exactly it happened. He charges at him. What do you think is gonna happen?
But that's the point. Right? That's what everyone here is doing. It's the living versus the dead. And even if you're one living man surrounded by a million dead people, you fight till you.
Was the last possible moment. Yeah,
and that's what he did. He knew he was going to die. He charged anyways, and that's the only time that you can be brave is when you're faced with those circumstances. So good on Theon. He redeemed his character. He showed his true character. That part.
You can only make peace with your enemies, right, Dan?
I don't know what you mean by that. I don't know why you would say that just now.
You can only be brave. You can only be brave in the face of danger.
Nothing to do with that.
It's the same idea. You can't be brave in a vacuum, right?
Yes.
You can't make peace with nobody. Same idea. So, yeah.
All right.
Don't worry. People will understand.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
hope so.
Okay. What else happens? What else did I like? Jorah's death. What do we want to say about Jorah's death?
Oh yeah, amazing. We all predicted that he would die and become a white, and honestly, that would have been
It was
devastating.
pretty
for
close. It was pretty close.
However, him dying defending Danny, he had a Boromir death. If anybody
Right.
are familiar with Lord of the Rings,
Who knows? Never seen it.
he died from a million wounds, but died protecting the person he loved, and even though he was a flawed character, even though he had made mistakes, he regained his honor. He lived up to his knightly vows, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
He died protecting Danny, and that's all he's ever really wanted to do. And she, obviously cried over his dead body, but that's Jorah's hero's death. He couldn't have achieved anything above
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think, and the way it was shot was really cool. There's this moment where like he uses himself as a shield. I thought it looked like she used him as a shield,
No,
but I
but
don't.
he was
It was
pushing
the other
her
way
away.
around. Yeah. So that's really amazing. I think we all expected Jorah to die, and it's. I think hard to ask for a better death than the one that he got. So I'm pretty happy with it. So Jason Telford mentions, remember that Jon and Arya reunion, and how did you sneak up on me? I only bring this up because I had brought this up, and that's example of how Arya was able to sneak up
And
on
it
them.
was also in the Godswood,
Right.
right in front of the tree.
Mhm.
So she's real sneaky in that area.
She's really good at sneaking in that specific area.
I know. I get it. She's sneaky. She's a badass killer. It still seems like she comes out of nowhere.
Wayne saying, Dany had to fend off a few of them herself.
Yep.
When did she learn to fight like that? Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's to me that it's much
out
like
of desperation, right?
Yes, it is that, and it's also much like Sam. They're an army of unthinking undead zombies. You don't have to hit them hard; you just have to hit them.
Right.
You don't have to be skilled. You just have to put the knife or sword in the right place. Like you can, if you're watching her, it's not like she's become Arya and she's twirling a sword around and using
Right.
some crazy technique. She's just like thrusting a piece of metal into a body whenever she can. She's hasn't become a badass fighter overnight, but she's doing the best she can.
Yeah. Okay. I'm trying to think of any other moments that stood out to me as good or bad.
Sansa in the crypts. I thought we were talking.
Yeah, that Sansa and Tyrion moment, right? Can we?
Yeah, great stuff.
So wait. It cuts away before anything happens, but do they leave behind that thing to like defend people, or what?
Tyrion does. Tyrion
Okay.
leaves. He kisses her hand and then he leaves. He goes to fight
Right.
because what else you can do? It's unclear what Sansa does at that moment.
It's also unclear as to Tyrion's fate.
No, he's around it towards the end. I think.
Is he? I can't remember. Maybe there's
look,
the chat room can sort us out on that one.
Listen, I promise you, Tyrion is not going to die.
No, I agree with you. I just they didn't. I don't think they showed him. It is an interesting moment to say, like, to have this touching moment with Sansa. So early on, there's this brief conversation with Sansa and Tyrion where she's like, maybe we should have stayed married, right?
Yeah.
And she said, like, well, you were the best of them. It was like a low bar. And she said, what does he say? It's the most terrifying thing he's ever heard.
Yeah.
And then they have this moment later, and I don't know. What do you think the show is trying to say here? Because they're saying something, and if they're trying to set up a romance, I think it falls.
Okay. I think if you see that, you might be reading into it too far. I think it's more what the show is trying to do is
Like mutual respect thing.
These people are confined to the same situation. What do they have to talk about? And this is a natural conversation for them to have.
All because it's the only interactions they've had together, basically.
Right. So I think that's more what it stems from. I don't think any romance is going to sprout from that, personally.
Well, I hope not. I hope not, because it feels forced, and I don't like it.
Certainly.
And that's why I asked that, because it feels like the show. It would be one thing to have that moment early on, right? Be this like they're by themselves, and that's all they have to talk about. But then to have I'm gonna go off and be a hero type kiss your hand. That's a pretty like big moment that if you just ignore it later, I think I have just as much faith in the show to do weird shit like that as it does to actually execute on things that I want them to do. So there's a strong possibility that they will set up a Tyrion Sansa remarriage in this down the road. And I don't think it should happen,
Yeah.
I can see it as being a possibility.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially from a political standpoint, it makes a lot of sense.
it does. Don't rule it out whatsoever. The fact that both John and Danny survived means that we still have to deal with the outcome, the fallout of that big revelation.
Can we just say for a second that everyone who thought that Danny was going to kill John in this battle I'm just so upset by this whole idea that she'd be so petty.
It's not something that should upset you. It's okay.
It's just so. There's a lot of bad ideas with Game of Thrones. There's a lot of ideas in general, and I like most of them. But there's just as many bad ideas as there is good ideas, and the idea that Danny would just kill John out of spite because of what she said to him, despite what we heard her say about him to Sansa, or otherwise, seemed hasty.
Okay,
I don't know. I didn't like it.
I don't mean to jump ahead of you here, but I think that stems from this philosophy. This we've been trained with Game of Thrones to understand that things are unpredictable. Right. That's what the show. That's its bread and butter.
Can we say though? I want to give us our due and say that we said that this would be the end of the Night King in this episode, and we were second guessing ourselves the whole episode, leading up to it and into it and through it, and then at the end of the day, we still ended up being right.
Well,
so I'm happy about that. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, sure, you can say that. I think I don't think that's like a brave stance to take. We knew. Most of us knew that approximately what was going to be happening in this episode.
Holy shit, look at this one. Jason Telford. I actually thought they were going to kill themselves together for a second, talking to Tyrion and Sansa.
Yeah, no.
Did you think that? I did not even consider. Did not even cross my mind.
They each drew their own dagger, and they're like, "This is it. What do you want to do?" And the choice being, do we want to die and then become a White Walker?
Right.
I think that point is made moot by the fact that they were able to bring back the people from the crypts that weren't killed by White Walkers. So my impression has always been they had to have been killed by a white or
dead
White
bodies
Walker.
everywhere, right? Yeah. There's just dead bodies everywhere.
Trust me. Listen, there's a million dead bodies all over the place. There's a million. They can bring back bears and wolves and whatever. How many dead animals are underneath us right now? It doesn't make any sense for them to be able to bring everything back all the time. It doesn't make sense.
Well, I mean, within respect, like if they're literally decomposed, it doesn't work, right?
You had skeletons.
Skeletons decompose too.
Eventually, yeah.
Liz saying 100% platonic mutual respect between these two. They were pulling their weapons to fight together or not to make out. I hope that's the case for the show. Yeah. Like I said, I just don't have as much faith in the show in the last couple of years to not make that mistake that I had mentioned earlier. I think
Sansa's over that though. Like Sansa has no interest in Tyrion romantically or otherwise.
I think, but it would be from a political standpoint.
Yeah,
I think
that's the only way it would work. But and that would depend on how things, what the outcome of the war.
Maybe she marries Jaime.
Hey, whatever works,
right?
I don't know. It's really hard to say, but yeah, absolutely. They're not shipping them. It would be a marriage of convenience at best.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think last question before we wrap things up here.
Yeah.
Jason, always with the pertinent questions. So who all goes south? How big is the army now? So Drogon's still around. That's a pretty big WMD, right?
Yep, it's hard to say whether or not Rhaegal is.
We don't know, but if he is, also that's a pretty big pretty big win for that Northern Army.
Yeah, they're unstoppable if they have two dragons.
Yeah.
Safe to assume that Cersei had Qyburn creating more of those scorpions, more of those.
Sure.
Ballistas. In terms of the remaining army, okay, look, it's safe to assume that the Dothraki are gone, right? They threw the cavalry.
There's a couple of them. There's not many of them. There are a handful, maybe.
I don't understand the purpose of having the Dothraki charge. The only thing I would add to that is they're not soldiers. They're not made to stand and wait. They're cavalry. Right. They have to be riding.
Right.
They don't fight on foot, basically.
Well, so with that in mind, it's almost a dumb strategy to send them to just ride off into a horde of people. You might want to, if you have a cavalry of or an army of like extremely talented cavalry, you might want to deploy them in a different way.
Yeah. So the idea is, traditionally, and this is
right. You hold the cavalry.
You have the Unsullied or your footmen.
Yeah.
Bows, catapults, whatever on the battlements. So Unsullied are holding the foot soldiers back, that raining fire on top of them, and then the cavalry comes in from either side is ideally how it would happen. In my mind, I could be wrong. I'm not a military historian, but that's
what we've seen. That's what has been the precedent we've set by television shows and movies that we've seen over the last 10, 15 years.
Listen, I've watched a lot of them, so I'm pretty sure I know what I'm talking about.
Listen, well, I'm not going to pretend I'm like a history major, but like for all intents and purposes, I've seen enough movies to be the equivalent of one.
I toyed around with it as my minor at one point. No, but for real, to send the Dothraki off, it seemed like a waste. It was a cool sequence in terms of the visuals, but it seemed like a waste of their prowess.
I agree, and I think it's more of I think we can call that more of an indictment of the strategy than it is of the show. Right.
Maybe both.
It's hard to say because they're the same thing, but you know what I mean?
It seems like it's one of the same. Anyways, to answer the question, Dothraki are gone. Most of the Unsullied are gone.
Yep.
It's hard to say how many wildlings are left. I think they took some heavy losses as well because they were outside of the wall. So realistically, they don't have much left.
It's a pretty small army, and it's what Jamie said. If we survive, they have more than enough to overwhelm us.
Yeah. So they were already outnumbered, 20,000 the Golden Company. Who knows how that's going to play out? The dragons are the wild cards because dragons are dragons.
Right.
You can have 30,000 men against a dragon. Dragon still wins.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we have talked about this in the past, but there is still a whole other mercenary group in Essos that is just sitting there, right?
Yeah, we had a fan email in about that. I think we're meant to forget about everything in Essos. I don't think Dario and
we can't forget about it. They just reminded us of the whole giant army coming from Essos.
Okay, sorry. We're gonna forget about everything in formerly Slaver's Bay, now called Dragon's Bay.
I feel like it's almost, you'd be like, okay, we'll forget about that, but here's this new thing that comes from that same place. I think
they're pretty far away. They're not the same.
No,
place.
it's the same continent. So
yeah.
I
mean,
just saying, the idea that Dario is what we're talking around, that Dario wouldn't know that what was happening. I think that we have a chance of seeing him still. I think there is actually a pretty strong possibility we'll see him, and
let's make a gentleman's bet. I guarantee you Dario is not.
Yeah, but you think Howland Reed is going to be on the fucking show?
Let's do both.
No. If Howland Reed shows up and
Dario does not, you owe me $20 or something like that.
And whatever. The other way around, $20.
If Dario does show up at some point and Howland never, either combination of those two, I'll give you $20.
All right, fine.
Yeah, it's on record now.
All right. Yeah, live on air. Okay. I think we can wrap things up here. It's been an hour.
Yeah.
Remember we said this was only a half an hour thing?
Yeah, who knows? Well, look, these are 80-minute episodes, and they're not going to.
No, I agree with you. So I'm worried about how long the full up. I mean, okay, I'm not so much worried about how long our full breakdown will be this week because it is just there's like almost no dialogue.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard to break down. So we will do our best. It'll still be at least an hour, so I promise that.
It's hard to not be an hour.
But I will say that I'm not so much worried about length. I know you guys aren't worried about length. I don't know why I get worried about it. I just feel like, chill out a bit, I guess. But when we were planning this whole thing, it was, hey, we're going to do 30 minutes after the episode, just really quick, like spew our brains out, right, initially. And it's turned into, 45 minutes was the first episode, then an hour, and now we're at an hour again, which is fine, which is totally fine. It's actually a good thing because if the chat room wasn't there, I think it wouldn't have gone this long.
Yeah, for sure.
And there is something super amazing and just like energizing about having this group of people here just talking through the episode with us, and I think it really helps. It really does help.
100%, yes.
So on that note, we will be breaking down our death pool. So get out your sheets for Tuesday when we post our full breakdown. We'll be recording tomorrow. And breaking down the rest of the episode, obviously. Thing is, though, in terms of that death pool, we're not going to get definitive answers about who's live or who's dead until next week.
Yeah, because
I don't think HBO even gave us a what's up next week episode preview. As far as I'm concerned, they
didn't.
We looked. We waited for it after. I mean, I'll check YouTube, but I don't think there exists one. So if that's the case, you know what? I almost applaud them. Again, it's Avengers style again, but this not giving us an answer, I think, is actually a really amazing thing.
It's great.
And I will say for the last and final time, and I will never bring it up ever again. That's a lie. But week to week presentations of a show will and always will be the best format to release a television show.
Okay.
Netflix. I'm looking
There
at
you
you.
go. Yeah. Shots fired.
yeah.
Open to debate, by the way, but good.
Yeah. John saying, do I go play Smash Brothers? No, John. We don't have Smash. We don't have internet at the new studio yet. So
We tried. They didn't show up, so we'll get you next week.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. So no, I'm not. But I did play a lot of Star Wars today. So Battlefront 2. So if anyone likes that video game stuff, those are the two that I play the most these last few days. Smash Bros. Battlefront 2.
I bought Mortal Kombat. I beat it in one sitting.
You know what I did? That's so funny. That's so funny because I watched the Mortal Kombat all the cutscenes cut together. I didn't even do that in one sitting. I did it in two, and there was no fights. I didn't have to do any of the fights.
I did it all, man.
Okay. So there was a preview. Apparently, there was a preview. We'll look at that. But again, we'll get definitive answers on who's alive, who's dead. Next week. So we're still playing that death pool. If anyone had,
well, you can't change your answer.
If anyone had Ed as the first death, props, and send send in some proof that you had done that ahead of time. I don't know. We'll give you something. There'll be some sort of reward for you. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll figure it out. But anyway, it has to be proven. Show me a newspaper from. I don't know. It's fine. We'll see you guys tomorrow. On Tuesday. We'll be recording tomorrow. And again, thank you everyone for supporting the show. You guys are the reason we were able to put this on. So
thanks,
so
you guys.
Yeah.
See you later.
Bye.